All right, welcome everybody. Today is December 11th, and we are here at our weekly TDK class, which is currently formatted as Parsha Shavua, specifically Midrash, followed by Halacha. And since Chanukah starts on Motzei Shabbat, Sunday night, sorry, on Sunday night, we're going to learn some Hilchot Chanukah as well. But we're going to start with studying some Midrash. And every week I feel like I have found the most provocative Midrash possible. But then the next week I find even a more provocative Midrash. So we're going to see this week some really interesting Midrashim. And the context of where we're starting is Yehuda and Tamar. So just to give some context, Yehuda gets married, and he has two children, and one of them marries Tamar, and then dies, and then following the tradition of levirate marriage, right? The next son marries Tamar, and he dies. And there's a third son, Shelah, who Tamar is expecting to marry. And Yehuda says, well, he's too young, wait a little bit, and then you could marry him. And she does not actually believe that Yehuda is going to give Shelah to her so she could build her family through that family. And so she dresses up, the Torah says, as a harlot. She sits on the side of the road. Yehuda comes by, and they have a sexual encounter, and she's pregnant with twins. One of them is Peretz, and Peretz ultimately is a direct ancestor of David, who is a direct ancestor of Moshiach. That is the background of the story that these midrashim center around. Okay, so this first midrash comes from Midrash Rabbah, and I'll just quickly read the psukim that this midrash is based on. The midrash, excuse me, sorry about this. 48 one. Okay. Hold on one second. Okay, excuse me. So here we go. The midrash is based on. Let me just open up the pasuk for us to see inside real quick. It's a Perek Lamed Chet pasuk Tet Vav. So as Yehuda is walking down the street, here's what the Torah says. Now I'll share the screen. It's not letting me share the screen. I don't know why that happened last week also. Oh, here we go. Sorry about that. The Torah says as follows. He's walking down the street. Vayir Eha Yehuda. Yehuda sees her. Vayachsheveha lezona. He took her for a harlot. Ki chista paneha. Because she covered her face, and that may have been the practice of harlots at that time. So then the Midrash says as follows. Let's look at the Midrash. The Midrash says as follows. This is really fascinating. What the Midrash does here. The Midrash says this. Let's read this Midrash. Anyone care to read the Midrash? Bereshit Rabbah 85:8. You could read it in English, in the Hebrew or the English. Any takers?
I'll read.
Thank you.
And Yehuda saw her, Rabbi Yochanan said he sought to pass by. The Holy One, the Holy Blessed One, sent an angel responsible for desire and said to him, "Where are you going, Yehuda? From where will kings emerge? From where will redeemers emerge?" And he turned to her against his will.
Okay. Um, so let's just unpack what's going on here. The rabbis are adding a lot of details that are not in the text. So the Torah says that Yehuda saw her, and he had no intent. And the shot is that he saw her, and vayachshavel lizona, he thought she was a harlot, and so he turned aside to her by the road and said, "Here, let me sleep with you." Vayet eleha el haderech, vayomer havana avo elecha. The pshat of the pasuk is very clear, right? The pshat of the pasuk is that Yehuda had every intention of having this encounter with her. But the Midrash says, well, the pasuk is only really giving you the end of the story, right? The beginning of the story is that Yehuda did not want to, right? That's what the Midrash says, that he wished to walk by her and not encounter her. He sought to pass by, bikesh la'avur. And then, but God said, wait a second. If he passes by, my whole plan goes out the window. I need a redeemer. I need a king. I need David HaMelech, and I need Moshiach. And for some reason, God is saying, and my plan, God says, is that the Melech HaMashiach and David have to come from Yehuda in this encounter, not just generally from Yehuda, which we know, but Yehuda in this encounter. And so I didn't know this until now, but apparently there is a malach, shehu mimuna al hata'ava, that there is an angel who's in charge of desire, lust, right? And God can activate this malach whenever God needs, I guess, to make sure that a desired encounter actually happens. So I'm interested in your thoughts on this midrash. I think it raises a lot of interesting questions. But first, let's stop and see if anyone has any questions or thoughts or ideas about the way that the rabbis see this unfolding. Why would they say
I,
this?
I'm sorry, Rabbi. I'm just gonna make a comment is that, sometimes we say, oh, the devil made me do it. And I'm like, oh wow, so an angel made you do it.
Right.
It's just really
Right. The angel made me do it. Right. Not the devil. Here and presumably, maybe I'm reading this wrong, but it sounds like the rabbis, like, they're saying this approvingly, like this needed to happen. So, because God is saying that if you don't do this, Yehuda, where will kings emerge from? Where will redeemers emerge from? Okay. Thank you, Stacy Aviva. Any other thoughts or comments? If you want to say something, just unmute yourself. Kate, I can't hear you. Are you trying to talk? I cannot hear you. I'm clicking on ask to unmute. Maybe you see a way to do that. I can't do it for you. All right. Sorry about that. Okay. Anyone else have any thoughts on this?
I think it's curious that the Chachamim are trying to protect Yehuda in a particular way. I mean, his wife has died. He's gone up to the sheep shearing. It's this time of kind of carousing and celebration, like and and I'm just really curious, like, why the Chachamim are trying to protect his honor, so to speak.
Meaning he wouldn't have done this if not for divine force.
Well, why wouldn't he have done this?
I'm
Except
saying that's what the rabbis seem to be saying, that on his own accord, he would not
right.
have done this. Right.
Yes, that's the kind of how they're unwinding it.
Right. That's true. Well, it could be that the reason they're protecting him is because he is the progenitor of Moshiach. And don't we want that to be pure? Right? Don't we want that to be from a place that's free of sin, or if not sin, free of, something untoward, something less than perfect.
I mean, yes and no. We want also for someone who is like the progenitor of kings and Mashiach to also have intentionality, which he has no intentionality. It still feels somewhat accidental to him at that point, or like, I don't know what's compelling me, but I'm going to follow this compulsion.
Right. So some of the commentaries want to say that maybe Yehuda, maybe this is the rabbi's way of saying he had some sort of Ruach HaKodesh or Nevuah. And that's what it means, that the rabbis, when they say that that the Malach appeared to him. In which case, then it gets back to that sort of state of purity and intentionality, right? So there are two ways to look at this midrash. One is Yehuda felt that this actually was God, and therefore, even though at first he didn't think this was something he was going to do, now he has this encounter with this malach, or he has this, maybe it's the rabbi saying some internal sense of nivuah, and he says, oh, this is now something that God wants me to do. So it does provide the intentionality that you see is missing. That's one option. Another option is no, he doesn't really know why. He can't understand this, and he doesn't attach it to a divine imperative. But he feels compelled, so he's going to do it anyway. In which case, that lacks intentionality. But either way, it seems like Yehuda is getting a pass from Chazal, which again is not surprising. It's Chazal that often paint like if you look at the Torah's view of Esav, it's not really so bad, but the rabbis paint Esav as being a really terrible person. And here we have a situation where the reverse may be true, where you have Yehuda doing something which is a little unseemly, but it's being cleaned up by the rabbis. Maybe because again we want Moshiach to come from a good place. I would like to share with you though an alternative to that from Rabbi Soloveitchik, which I think is really, really fascinating. Let me see.
Rabbi,
Yeah, Brian, go ahead.
Can I just share a story as an aside? Our supposedly innocent 5-year-old son, Michael, was sitting in his car seat in the back seat of the car, and the car pulled up next to us at a traffic light. And the license plate on that custom plate said 41 Night, Knigt. And he took one read at that and he said, that's like a story of Yehuda and Tamar.
Very cute. Okay, thank you.
Rabbi,
yeah.
Serena, I pulled over, so I'm not driving.
Good.
My reaction was, first of all, about the angel. Well, of course, because everything is an angel. The angel of photosynthesis and the angel of happiness and sadness and all the things. Rabbi Alter once gave a shir about the angel of happiness and sadness and other abstract things like that. Mm-hmm. But as for the rabbis giving him a pass, I mean, I'm happy it came to a good ending, but I'm just skeptical of classic men giving him giving that male an excuse. Classic Jews giving the Jewish. I'm just picturing it on social media. Like Esav, he was just faithful to his wives. Yitzchak didn't like his wives, but he was safely married to all his wives. But the Jew goes and, oh no, it was an angel. So I mean, it's just I find it very hard to absorb an excuse like that.
Okay, well,
I much prefer to say a good thing came from a temptation. Of course, there was an angel. You know, a husband and a wife all the time. It's an angel also.
Right. Okay. All points well taken. Thank you, Serena.
And
Okay.
just one more thing.
Yeah.
Just like, why does Moshiach have to come from a pure place when it's Yehuda? But we also know that the Moshiach also came from Ruth, who was a Moabitess, and so that doesn't jive. It doesn't mix with my head.
Okay, great. So let's bring this all together. This is an excellent essay from Rabbi Soloveitchik, which offers, I think, doesn't give anyone a free pass at all. And so let's see it. Here we go. So this is an essay from a book called Abraham's Journey, and it's essays on the life of Abraham and Sarah. So we basically passed these parshiot, but the first, Rabbi Soloveitchik here analyzes another less unseemly story in the Torah, which is the story of Lot's daughters, right? Who, if you remember, think that the two of them and their father are the only people left on the planet because Sodom has been destroyed. And they feel that they have no choice but to repopulate the world by getting pregnant from their father. Okay? And Rabbi Soloveitchik writes as follows in this discussion. Let me make it a little bigger. The angels left Avram and went to Sodom to destroy the city and save Lot and his family. To understand their mission, let us read a very strange and puzzling Talmudic passage. Rava said, "What is the meaning of the verse? Then said I, lo, I am come with the scroll of a book which is prescribed for me." David said, when he became king, "I thought that I have come only now, but I did not know that in the scroll of the book it was already written about me. For there it is written, the angels hastened Lot, saying, take your wife and your two daughters, who can be found hanimtsaot. And here it is written, I have found Matzati, David my servant, with my sacred oil I've anointed him." So David is noticing that the Chazal, the rabbis are noticing the similarity in words here between Lot's daughters, hanimtsaot, and David himself, Matzati. So what does Rabbi Soloveitchik write? David thought that he had just entered Jewish history, that he had entered and became a historical figure when the prophet Samuel anointed him with holy oil. He did not know that the Almighty had been concerned about him centuries earlier when he saved Lot and the angels told him, take your wife and your two daughters who can be found, hanimtsaot. Why were the angels so concerned about Lot's two daughters? Why did they specifically tell Lot to take the girls out of the city because of its impending destruction? The reason is that Lot's daughters were the ancestors of the Moshiach. Ruth, a descendant of Moab, so this is for you, Stacy Aviva, right? Ruth, who was a descendant of Moab, was the mother of the Davidic dynasty. Naamah, the Ammonitess, was the mother of Rechavam, and the king Messiah will be a descendant of David, Shlomo, and Rechavam. God did not send the angels because he was interested in Lot or in his daughters. He was interested in something else, the Moshiach. The great vision of a redeemed world would have been made impossible if Lot's daughters had been destroyed in Sodom. That is why the Torah is so interested in telling us the strange story of the act of incest that took place in the cave. Why else would the Torah record such an ugly event? It is not a story of incest, it is the story of the Mashiach. And then he goes on to say, on the bottom of this page, Lot's daughters had something beautiful to contribute to the emerging personality of King Mashiach. What did this primitive girl possess that the Almighty, gathering virtues and noble traits from all over the world, picked up? She was uncouth and primitive. She committed incest, and yet she was the great-great-grandmother of Ruth. The Mashiach will be her descendant. she was under the impression, says Rashi, that the cosmic cataclysm had struck and the only three human beings had survived. So Rabbi Soloveitchik goes on to say that even though what she did, what they did was terrible, right? It was incest. In the end, what motivated it, Rabbi Soloveitchik says, what motivated it was bravery and concern for the future of the world. And so Rabbi Soloveitchik goes on to say that in creating the Moshiach, Rabbi Soloveitchik says Moshiach is really a potpourri of ingredients. You need a little bit of this in Moshiach, and one thing you need in the Moshiach is bravery and boldness, because Moshiach is coming to overturn the world, to change the world. And so it can't be timid. So where does the strength of the Mashiach come from? The courage and the boldness? Lot's daughters, of all places, who did something terrible, right? And he goes on to say the same thing about Yehuda and Tamar and about Ruth, whose mother-in-law sends her to, quote unquote, uncover the feet of Boaz, which that is a euphemism, right? So there you go, Serena. There, Rabbi Soloveitchik's take, he's not excusing Yehuda. He's not excusing Lot's daughters. What they did was incest and bad, and what Yehuda did was unseemly. But nevertheless, and what Tamar did also may have been problematic, right? But nevertheless, God needs all of these different personalities to create the composite personality of the Mashiach. So now we could look at this Midrash a whole nother way. God needed this to happen because it does raise questions of free will and for sure, but God was looking to create a personality of Mashiach. That's why God says at the beginning of the Midrash, if you don't do this, Yehuda, where is the Mashiach going to come from? Where are kings going to come from? Where are redeemers going to come from? What he's saying is, where will those personality traits come from? If you don't, we need Tamar's personality in this. She is making sure that history goes forward. We need you and Tamar in this, and therefore I'm going to either give you a nevuah that you have to do this, or some other way, as we said, Sari, compel him to do this. So I love this point that Rabbi Soloveitchik makes. I think it's very powerful and allows us to look at these events as they were, maybe even bad, but realizing that sometimes those personalities are needed. It's not a perfect answer. It raises lots of questions, like I said, about free will. It raises questions of what happens if someone gets hurt on the way. What happens, God, if someone gets hurt on the way to you creating the Moshiach? I think that's an interesting question to ask in this situation. But nevertheless, that is the take of Rabbi Soloveitchik. Does someone have their hand up? Someone have a question? I see someone have a question? No. Okay. So that is Rabbi Soloveitchik and this midrash. Rabbi Soloveitchik does not mention this midrash, but I do think what he says is applicable to this story as well. He does address the issue of Tamar directly and says that what Tamar contributed is the ability to wait. She waited for the second son, and then she was waiting for the third son. Maybe that's an issue of Moshiach also has to be patient to wait. But I think Rabbi Soloveitchik doesn't go far enough, because it's true that Tamar waits, but at some point she stops waiting. Right? At some point she says, no, Yehuda's not right. Yehuda's not going to give me Shelah, the third son. So really, my read is that what Tamar does here, she takes matters into her own hands, which again is an important trait for Mashiach. Okay, we're going to stop there on the Parshat HaShavua and move on to halacha. First, if anyone has any questions or comments before we move on to the next to the halacha part. Any last words?
Well, I love it that it's so messy. And I do think that it is this, like, that is just so us, and I really appreciate that we don't need like a virgin birth, so to speak, but that we get the mess, and but we also have the acknowledgement of what so many personalities, so to speak, bring. I think Tamar is incredibly brave to do what she did.
Yeah, yeah. And it's a shame to me that Rabbi Soloveitchik doesn't go there, and he sort of paints her as the patient one. But it feels like there's more to it than that, like you just said. Okay. Did I just shut my camera off by accident? Sorry. Oh, hold on one second. Something has
Keyboard.
malfunctioned. Oh, I know why. Sorry about that. I apologize. Technical difficulties here. That should fix it. Okay, great. Any last questions or thoughts on the Parshat HaShavua element of our discussion? Okay, thank you all for your excellent questions and your excellent insights. Let's move on to halacha. So tonight we're supposed to be talking about interesting or complex Chanukah lighting scenarios. Okay, and we're going to study the work of Rabbi Eliezer Melamed in his Panine Halacha. But before we do that, anyone have any interesting past experiences about lighting Hanukkah candles in out of the ordinary places? It's like often vacation time, so we find ourselves in all sorts of places. I remember we were once on a family trip at a hotel on Hanukkah, and of course you can't light Chanukiah in a hotel room. There's usually a specific sign on the back of the door that says no open flame, and so we actually went down into the lobby and asked the manager if we could light our Chanukiah on a table in the lobby. And we explained to him what Hanukkah was, and he was more than happy to allow us to do that. And we played dreidel while the Hanukkah candles were burning, and it was sweet. A few people walked in. If I recall, there was a Christmas tree in the lobby as well. So that was an interesting one. Anyone else have a interesting Hanukkah lighting encounter?
Yeah, I remember staying in a hotel in Brooklyn on the East River, and it was fifth night of Hanukkah, and I managed 6 candles plus a shamash. Totally kosher, because the 6th candle was the Statue of Liberty.
Excellent. Okay. And you lit in the room?
In the room. Well, electric.
Oh, electric. Okay, so that's an interesting question. We'll get to that. That's a good solution.
At least I'll say that for you, because I know you're hot on safety.
Yes. Okay, great. Yes. I think
I love that about you.
We should fulfill the mitzvah and be safe. All right. So let's go. Let's jump to the halachot here. So I will tell you that we're going to be studying from a book called the Panine Halacha, which is a really wonderful, wonderful way to study halacha. It's very clear. All of the books are available online, and many of them have been translated into English. I happen to have hard copies, but I usually just access it online. There's also an app for them. So it's a great way if you're ever going somewhere and you have a halachic question, or you want to just study halacha. Here's the app, Panine Halacha. I don't know if you could see it. And it happens to be open to Hadlakat Nerod Chanukah. I guess I was learning that recently. So
excuse my ignorance, Rabbi. What does Panine mean?
Oh, Panine means like I think it means like something like the precious halacha. I think. I'm not even sure. That's a good question. Okay, so first a hotel, because that's a common question as many people are traveling. What we're really discussing here is the nature of the mitzvah, right? Chanukah is interesting. There's a debate whether Chanukah is what we call a chovat habayit, an obligation on the home. And therefore, if you find yourself in a place that's not a home or your home, the obligation changes. Or is Chanukah a chovat gavra, an obligation on the person? And therefore, no matter where you are, you have to light Chanukah candles. That is the question that a lot of these scenarios are based on. So let's jump right in. People, anyone care to read?
I'll go.
Okay, great. Thank you.
People staying in a hotel must light Chanukah candles. Let us briefly review what we explained in the previous sections. Whole families and independent unmarried people must light with a brachot. If one's spouse is lighting at home, or if one is dependent on one's parents who are lighting at home, then according to Sephardic custom, one should light without the brachot, while according to Ashkenazic custom, one should light with the brachot.
Okay, so what we're seeing here is that Rabbi Melamed is teaching us that a hotel, because one rents it, it's private, essentially becomes your home for the night. And therefore, you should light there, according to Ashkenazi custom, right? And then he goes on to say, it is best to light in one's hotel room, as this room is set aside for personal use, as opposed to the dining room, which is for communal use. Now, in the Israeli, this is more in the Israeli context, right? That there's a dining room that, although a lot of hotels that we stay in also have like a breakfast room, there may be a restaurant in hotels, but he's saying the room is the best place to light. If the hotel room has a window facing the street, one should light there. Someone should remain in the room for at least a half an hour after one light so the candles are not left unattended and a fire is not caused as a result. If after half an hour one wants to leave the room, one should put out any candles that are still lit. This is an important halakha that a lot of people may not be aware of, that after the candles have burned for the requisite amount of time, one is permitted to blow them out. This also comes up if one lights at home, but then needs to go out, or is invited to a party or has a meeting, right? So we're lighting pretty early, I think like 5:30 or something along those lines. If you light right at the time, by 6 o'clock they burn for the proper amount of time, and then you could blow them out. And if you have to leave the house, which I recommend to do if one has to leave the house, not to leave candles unattended. If the hotel management does not permit guests to light candles in the room, then since there's no alternative, one should light in the dining room, or in the case that I described, in the lobby, which is also a public area. And again, I think those are similar. Those are similar things. Now, an interesting, I think, compromise to make sure one is getting the best of both worlds is to do what Brian did and what I did combined. Meaning, it may be that lighting in the room, it is, according to Rabbi Melamed, lighting in the room is the best option. But we can't light in the room because we're not allowed to light a flame there. So in that case, it probably pays to light the electric menorah in the room. There are numerous poskim who say that one does fulfill their obligation with an electric menorah, and then go down into the lobby and light there with regular candles with a bracha. So light the candles in the room without a bracha. Maybe it's probably better to do it the other way, actually. Light in the lobby with a bracha, and then go to your room and light the electric in a window. That way, you're covering both. You're covering both options. There are some people who say you could even make a bracha on. There are some poskim who say you could even make a bracha on an electric menorah. Most poskim, I think, don't go there, don't allow that. So that's why I'm suggesting that one light the electric without a bracha and the one in the lobby with the bracha. Okay, so that's when it comes to hotel rooms. It's also important to note, just in general, I think I mentioned this last week, that one fulfills the mitzvah of lighting Chanukah candles on every night of Chanukah, no matter how many people are in your home, with one candle. right? So if you're stuck and you only have one candle, or it's only safe to light one candle, or the manager in the hotel says, oh, you can't light, I can't have five of you lighting four candles each, but you could light one candle, that's okay too, and one fulfills their obligation with that. That's the fundamental basic halacha of how to fulfill that mitzvah.
Rabbi,
Okay.
I don't remember what you said about the shamash.
So the shamash is used in two ways. The shamash is used often as used to light the other candles, but the halachic purpose of the shamash is to avoid using the actual Hanukkah candles for any benefit. So nowadays, with when most of us light in homes that are, that have lights, the shamash is less important. It's nice to have the shamash to maintain that tradition. It looks nice. That's what we're familiar with. But in a situation, again, where you don't have a shamash, you don't have an extra candle, or if you use an extra candle tonight, you're not going to have a candle for tomorrow night. Certainly, it's better to save that candle rather than to use it as a shamash, provided that there are other candles for you to light. Okay. Okay, let's continue with the lighting of the, let's say you're in a hospital, which also brings with it some challenges. Hospital patients. A patient in a hospital is still obligated to light Hanukkah candles. However, if he or she is married, he fulfills his obligation through his spouse's lighting at home. Now, by the way, another solution to the hotel problem is if you can't light in your room and you can't light in the lobby, if someone is at home lighting for you, then that's okay as well. Because remember, we said that on some level the mitzvah is home based, and your home that you live in, if someone's there, your adult children or your spouse can light, and you fulfill your obligation through their lighting. In fact, some suggest that if you are going to light on your own, you have specific intention not to fulfill your mitzvah with what's going on at home, because since that's your home, you may fulfill your mitzvah that way. But if you want to light on your own, especially with a bracha, you would have this sort of negative intention not to fulfill the mitzvah there. So that's a third option if one is stuck. And that's what Rabbi Malamed here talks about a hospital as well. However, if he is married, he fulfills his obligation through his spouse's lighting at home. Likewise, if he is young and lives with his parents, and he fulfills his obligation through his parents' lighting at home. According to Ashkenazi custom, even though one has fulfilled his obligation through his family members' lighting, if he wishes to beautify the mitzvah, he may light in his hospital room with the brachot as explained above. That's never going to happen in the United States. No one's letting anyone light an open flame in a hospital room. As explained above, according to the custom of most Sephardim, he should not light candles. One who lights candles in a hospital should preferably light in his room. Again, he's writing here from the perspective of Rabbi Malamed from in Israel. So we have to now apply this to the outside of Israel situation. One who lights candles in a hospital should preferably light in his room, which is designated for him specifically. If he lights in the cafeteria, he fulfills his obligation, as it is considered his home, and to some degree while he's hospitalized. So it's interesting. I wonder, if you're in a hospital, if going into the lobby would also be okay. That's public area, just like the cafeteria is a public area, and it is where people sit around, or like a waiting room. Sometimes the floors have a family room with permission, but without permission, then one should use the electric or rely on what's going on at home. A patient who's exempt from lighting because someone is lighting for them at home should still try to see Hanukkah candles and hear the brachot, because some maintain that even though someone is lighting for him at home, which allows him to fulfill the mitzvah of lighting candles, nevertheless he has not fulfilled the mitzvah of thanking God for the miracle, which happens when you see it and you remember it. Therefore, you should find someone who is lighting with the brachot and listen to his brachot with the intention of fulfilling the obligation to recite bracha of She'asad Nisim Lavotenu. The second bracha we recite each night. On the first night of Chanukah, he should have in mind to fulfill the obligation of Shechianu as well, which is a bracha we only recite the first time we light Chanukah candles. So those are some guidelines for hospitals. Those are some guidelines for hotels. Now we get to another interesting question, which is very common. What if one is flying, right? And they leave too early to light, and they're going to be flying through the night and not get to their destination until the morning when it's too late to light. So does that mean that they miss a night of Hanukkah candles, or are there other options? So let's see what Rabbi Melamed says about that. Also, by the way, he's talking about, this is a very Colorado thing. What if you're camping, right, and you're living in a tent? Or Rabbi Melamed talks about situations of like soldiers who are in the field. So the poskim disagree about whether the obligation to light Hanukkah candles is limited to the home, as I mentioned earlier. Some argue that the sages ordained that only one who has a home must light candles. So we saw before that the hotel is considered one's home and the hospital is considered one's home. Therefore, one who lives on the street cannot fulfill the mitzvah. Similarly, one who is hiking or camping and intends to sleep in a field, or a soldier who is living in a tent that is too small to qualify as a house, cannot fulfill the mitzvah. Others maintain that even one who does not have a home must light candles wherever they are. So that's what I said earlier. That's the debate about whether it requires a home or not. Since there is uncertainty in these cases, one who does not have a home should light without brachot. For example, one who is hiking or camping on Hanukkah and sleeps in a field or by the road should light candles without a bracha. Similarly, a soldier sleeping in a trench or a small tent should light without brachot. However, if a hiker or a soldier is sleeping in a large tent, he should light with the brachot at the tent's entrance, as the tent is considered a home. There's a debate about how big this house needs to be, and I saw a note somewhere here in this article that I was reading.
There's about two square meters further up.
Right, so that's one view. So Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach considered the possibility that the minimum dimensions of a bayit regarding candle lighting corresponds to the same thing as a sukkah, which is about 22 inches by 22 inches and a height of 31 inches. However, later he considered the possibility that the halacha's requirement of a house only requires a distinctive and identifiable personal domain that is designated as the person's place of residence. So even a very small tent, in that case, according to that view, would allow one to light with a bracha. He found support for this view of Rabbi, based on a tshuva from Rabbi Mordechai Shvadran, a leading halachist of the 19th century, who was asked whether it was permissible for someone to light Hanukkah candles while traveling on a train. And this also goes to the question of airplane. He ruled that despite the impermanent nature of a moving train, the area designated for this passenger could be considered like a house of residence, rented for eating and sleeping, and therefore the person could light at this bayit. So the definition for him of a bayit is a place that you rent to eat and sleep, and therefore you can light Hanukkah candles there. Rabbi Auerbach did not resolve this question conclusively, remaining uncertain whether the bayit needed for Hanukkah needs to have the dimensions and structures associated with a sukkah, or whether it is sufficient to have a defined area designated as one's residence. Therefore, he ruled that someone traveling on a plane or a train should light Hanukkah candles, but without a bracha. On the one hand, the individual has paid for the use of this location for eating, sleeping purposes. On the other hand, it does not have the dimensions and structure associated with a temporary home. That was Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. Let's see what Rabbi Melamed says. One who is traveling through the night on a train or a plane or a ship with cabins should light with the brachot. So here we have a machloket of contemporary poskim of what to do on a plane or a train, even though he is in transit. The inside of the train, plane, or ship is considered a home for the purpose of lighting Chanukah candles. However, sometimes safety considerations do not allow. The truth is it's a moot point, because if the only way you could light on a plane or a train is with electric, and therefore, and we say to not say a bracha with electric, and so that solves that problem. And then Rabbi Melamed quotes the same tshuva that Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach said. According to response of Maharsham, the obligation depends on having a home. This is also the position of Mikrai Kodesh. In contrast, response of Beit Sha'arim states that the mitzvah does not depend on having a home. And then it depends, of course, on what a home is. So, and a cruise may be different, actually, because you have a cabin in a cruise, and that's very different. That's essentially a hotel room. Now, of course, you're not allowed to light a flame in a cabin of a cruise, but there certainly one is obligated to light and should probably light electric. And if there is a dining hall or a public area where it would be permitted, one could also light a regular live flame in those places. So those are some of the guidelines of how to light Chanukah candles in out of the ordinary places. We saw a little bit of a machloket between Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach and Rabbi Melamed about what to do on a plane or a train. Perhaps the same machloket would apply in a tent, where Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach is not sure if a tent, certainly a small tent, represents a home or not. So he says no bracha. Rabbi Melamed said one can do those things with a bracha. Okay. Before we say goodnight, any comments or questions? Anything anyone has on their mind regarding our topic?
Yeah,
Or
what about
not regarding?
What about if one is out camping in a tent, winter camping, and there's a camping table, but some distance away at the regular setup of a campsite?
Right. And it's the tent on your campsite.
Yeah, it's my tent that I'm sleeping in, but
Right.
it's I'm not sure how to light in the tent.
Right. So
I'd like to go and take the candles and put them on the eating table.
Right. And that's usually the campsites have a place for the tent and a table that's there. Exactly.
Right.
So that's your table. Sure. Now the issue there is the wind, right? So in that case, it's probably advisable to light in one of those glass boxes. Because if you're going to light in a place where it's likely going to blow out before it lasts the half hour, you should not say a bracha in that case. In order to say the bracha, one needs to be lighting in a place where at least potentially it could last. Now, if it goes out, that's fine. But lighting outside on an unprotected like picnic table, the chances of it lasting are very low, and therefore I don't think one should make a bracha in that case, unless you could build some sort of wind protection around it. Yeah, and if you feel that it has the potential to last for a half hour, and in that case, like using a tea light, which is low, and then you could build something around it to give it a fighting chance rather than a tall Chanukiah. That makes sense. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
Okay, my friends.
Thank you very much.
Questions.
Oh, go ahead, Serena, please.
Question one: how do you light without a bracha? Do you just light, or do you say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu, or how do you?
That's a great question. So I think lighting with a bracha just means lighting. I'm sorry, lighting without a bracha, just lighting without a bracha. You just light. However, I do think it's okay to say Baruch Atah Asher Kiddishanu Mitzvotav V'Tzivanu L'Hadlik Ner Shel Chanukah. Because what makes something a bracha is God's name and Malchut. So Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu, that's God's name. Melech HaOlam, that's Malchut, that's God's rulership. Those are the ingredients of a bracha, and that's God's name. So if you say Baruch Atah Asher Kiddishanu Mitzvotav V'Tzivanu L'Hadlik Ner Shel Chanukah, without shame, God's name, and Malchut, God's rule, you have not said a bracha in vain, and I think that's perfectly legit. So I think you have a choice. You have a choice.
And my other question was, in these cases, like if you can light this way, then does it mean you should? Like you have to? What if you, like it sounds like in this case you can do this and you can do that. Like it sounds like we have options. It sounds to me like Shabbat candles or something you're supposed to do what you're supposed to do.
So in those cases, those are cases where we're not sure if there's, like in Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach's case, he's not sure if one should light on a plane or on a train or not. But he's not saying for sure one is obligated, and he's not saying for sure one is not obligated. So therefore, one should, but without the bracha, which is a general approach we have in halacha when we're not. Because I'm
thinking that.
Go ahead.
I'm thinking he hasn't been camping. It's not a surprising guess, but he probably hasn't been camping. But the tent, even if it's small, it's like Jews over the centuries sometimes lived in a tiny little hovel. That's home.
Yeah. That was Rabbi Melamed's position, right? As long as you have something which is set aside as yours for eating and sleeping, and especially you're at a campsite, you rented it, right? You're paying for it. You've made a kinyan on it. So there, Rabbi Melamed seems to be comfortable saying you can light with a bracha. Some people are more cautious, like Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, and he said to light without a bracha. But in this case, we have, as we say, a gavra rabbah, an important posek, who's saying in that case you can light with a bracha. And yeah, if the way we understand camping is like we bring our utensils there, it's like a sukkah. We bring our cooking utensils there and our food, and we sleep in it, and maybe we'll watch a movie in there before bed, and we'll read a book, and we'll try to heat it to make it more like a bayit. I think saying a bracha in such a case is legitimate. You're muted, Suna.
Who is this Rabbi Melamed?
Rabbi Melamed is the author of the Pnei Halacha. He is the most studied. He is the author of the most studied halachic work these days in Israel, because the Israeli school system uses his books to teach halacha, because he's super clear and easy to understand, and he is considered a major posek of our time, Rabbi Melamed. He is the rabbi of Har Bracha, which is a town in the Shomron. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. This was delightful. I hope to see you in Shul. Shabbat Shalom. Happy Chanukah. And good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.